Hey everyone, welcome to this episode number three. So, in this episode, I am honored to have a friend of mine, Adam, to be in this podcast with us, or a little mini interview, whatever you want to call it. Today, we want to talk a little bit about Clay, AI, and some of the advanced topic. Adam and I, just a little bit background, we are friends. I guess we can call it like from the same graduating class, right? In one of the agency velocity that we are some of the program that we're in. But yeah, Adam, how about you give about like 1 or 2 minutes introducing yourself to the audience?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess start with my initial background. I've been creating digital businesses online, whether it's YouTube channels or like affiliate blogs since like over 10 years ago, right? But I think the main business that I fell into was copywriting, and as a copywriter, I was constantly working for agencies. And so eventually I stumbled upon Agency Velocity and other people who were, email was really blowing up as a tool. So I wanted to start my own outbound agency about a year ago. And then, yeah, it took off pretty fast in terms of our interest, but we actually didn't even launch our first email campaign until December. And right around that time, Clay was really taking off. So our first campaign we did with Google Sheets and ChatGPT. And then from then on, it was all Clay. And pretty quickly, I got into the Clay community, joined Clay Bootcamp, became a Clay Bootcamp mentor. We kind of shifted our agency phrasing from a cold email agency to a Clay focused outbound or sales agency, right? So we help a lot of sales teams and founder led sales teams with doing outbound. And we're kind of all over the place in terms of niche, but generally we are working with SaaS companies, and we've grown to about 10 clients from like one, like 3 to 4 months ago. So the growth has been pretty explosive thanks to, setting up inbound funnels and being a Clay expert and all those great things. So 5 employees now, pretty small agency overall, but we're doing pretty well. So
And I love that for you. Like
yeah,
we've been through like the journey together. Now just hearing like your growth is just an awesome thing to hear.
yeah,
And it's funny that you mentioned like Google Sheet because like back in the good old day when Clay like wasn't like a huge thing, we just have everything on the Google Sheet and just got like Chat GPT and just do
yeah,
all that trick to get the personalization in. I remember those times.
yeah.
That was good times.
It's crazy.
Um, yeah. So I guess we can hop into the first question. So like, what do you think like from doing a bunch of like AI personalization and things like that using Clay and Google Sheet back in the day?
Yeah.
What are some key elements that you see in the cold email that help stand out in the crowded inbox?
Yeah, I can also talk a little bit about how it's changed, right?
Yeah.
I think early on it was possible to like to say to people like, "Hey, I saw you went to NC State, like go Wildcats, like did you see the championship last year or something like that?" So the first campaign we ever sent out that was personalized, we tried to let like AI go really deep into the person's background, and I think like our first campaign we were literally spent like a couple $100 back when AI was like super expensive, only for like a list of 1,000 people, right? And
Mm.
so I think both of us and many agencies agree these days that you should kind of stay away from personalization and AI, using AI in that way, just because there's higher leverage things to do. So generally these days with AI, we try and find a really good company personalization, something that's like really relevant to why someone would be receiving an email from us. But we also do some like events focused AI personalization. We still do PS compliments if they're related to the prospect. Like if I can tie in the compliment into the reason that we're reaching out to them. Otherwise, I think that stuff is super cringe, and we try and stay away from compliments just for the sake of compliments, right? And we cut, just like I think you've done, is cut down the size of the email, make it easy to read, 1 or 2 sentences if possible, right? We can't always do that for clients because they have a brand voice and they want us to do all this stuff that we're kind of tied down with. But I think for my own agency, we've really tried to focus on who the prospect is selling to and what their goals are, and then like telling AI like, hey, go spend as much money as possible trying to find out these minute details about who the prospect might be. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a client who just asked me just now, like, look, Wesley, I just got this cold email and they are mentioning like, hey, saw you went to this school and things like that. And he would tell me like how I thought it was so cool. And I had to tell him like, no, man, that's
yeah, we're not going to do that.
that's it.
I mean, it was so popular for a while and it actually worked for a while. But that's the thing about cold email and personalization in general. If you're doing something that someone else isn't doing, it's going to be so much more
Mm,
successful. And I think relevancy is just so much more important than personalization for the sake of personalizations. I think we both have emails that we send for clients where there's basically no personalization in it or very
mm,
little, just because it's not relevant to the email. That happens sometimes. too. I think a lot of people ask like, "Oh, you must personalize every email like crazy, right?" I'm like, no. Generally, I give AI a very rigid structure to follow for a
Mm,
personalization. Like I tell it how to write the first 5 words of the sentence, and sometimes even how to end the sentence, just so it doesn't go off
yeah.
track, right? Because that can happen a lot. And we spend hours and hours writing prompts that sound human. I'll do things like tell AI like use abbreviations, even occasionally misspellings if it makes sense, right, to sound as human as possible. And I tweak that until every single personalization has no errors in it, right? Which is almost impossible, but it's something that we strive for.
Gotcha, gotcha. So I appreciate you for hopping to some of the key areas that you've seen, like the most common mistake that people make with personalization and things.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I'm just out of curiosity, what has been like your go-to personalization that you see it works almost like across like every industry?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question because we've been using basically the same personalization for the last year and it like prints. And I'll just share the sauce here. It's basically we use AI to go research who somebody's ICP is. And generally, we're using like 4.0 to do that so that it gets it really accurate. We tell it, hey, use the web, use anything that you have that we have in the table to go find out who the prospect of this company is.
Mm,
And then maybe addition to that, find a problem that they help solve or something that they do really well, like as something else we can use in the personalization. And the rest of the email is super short, right? We generally, the subject line references the prospect, especially for our own outbound outreach.
mm,
We can reach any niche with this personalization, right? We're calling out like, workflows for, HR managers or workflows for CTOs and finance, right?
mm,
Like really specific things that AI finds out for us. And then in the email, we're saying like, hey, in 30 minutes to an hour in a call, I can help you, do this thing. And there's other ways to apply it to other industries other than just outbound. But, that ICP based personalization is done super well for us. And we constantly get compliments that like, hey, wow, like I normally ignore emails like this, but you mentioned the exact kind of person that I want to talk to. And so sometimes it's a little clickbait, but also most of the time, like we're delivering on that promise of finding them that ICP, even sometimes when it's difficult, right? So
yeah. No, I mean, I love that. I just want to really doubling down on that because that's essentially what I do
yeah,
as well. Like, I love to have that basic personalization. Like, hey, I've noticed that this is you guys helping like enterprise because you guys do X, Y, Z, and just kind of summarize what the
yeah,
company does, right? So that's like my go-to
yeah,
personalization too. Now, you also have seen some sort of like irrelevant personalization as well, right? So let's say aside from just what they do and like what they're helping with and the ICP and things like that, how do you make how like what should you look for to make a personalization more relevant?
Yeah, I think there are like static things, or I guess actually dynamic things. Like say you're reaching out to like new hires or something like that. You might want to reference if you get that data from LinkedIn or wherever, how long they've been at the company, specific things like that, and then reference specific problems that they might be encountering in the first few months of being hired. Or let's say they've been there a while. There's a totally different problem that could be solved, and then we match our companies or the client we're working for, let's say their USP or how they are able to help with that problem. And then we have AI write that email. And generally, like besides that and the personalizations that I mentioned, that's basically what we stick to. We want to make sure that everything's relevant, whether it's timing based, mentioning like we basically don't do any personalizations either that are like, hey, I saw you posted this on LinkedIn or sometimes maybe like there's a news based personalization that's relevant, but any kind of like congratulations personalization I just think is like cringe because people are all getting that from every email spammer. So like it's mostly about doing things different than other people, and sometimes that means cutting down personalization so you're sending a shorter email, which I think you know all too well.
Yeah. I forgot who told me this in the past, but they're essentially saying personalization is kind of the same as like dating. Like when you meet somebody at like a club or like an event, and you come up to somebody and you just start saying things like, "Hey, I think you're extremely beautiful and sexy," and like that kind of cringe and kind of creepy in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you hit the nail on that. So Adam here, as you already know, is also a Clay expert. So talk to me a little bit about like how advanced sales tool like Clay, and I know there's other like players out there like Persana has been helping with like relevancy and personalization and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I can basically only speak to Clay because Clay is what we use. But yeah, I mean, as far as like how it's helping us do that, I think that was the question you asked, right? Like how Clay helps us do that personalization and relevancy. Basically, allows us to run over thousands of contacts and do that kind of personalization instantly. And then we
Mm,
also will have personalization waterfalls, which is really interesting, right? Where we have an ideal kind of personalization that we want to do within Clay. And so within Clay, you can say like, hey, see if they've posted recently, or see if there's data on their company page about pricing or something. And if not,
Mm,
fall back to something else, like see if they have a services page, or if not, see if they have an about me. And then we, if Clay is not able, or I should say AI inside Clay is not able to find one personalization angle, we'll fall back to another, and then another, and then another. And sometimes the final backup is
mm.
just a generic something that could possibly be relevant to them, but is better than sending nothing or just throwing out the lead, right? We try to never throw out a lead, so we always have something we can say to them, even if it's not our first option.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's great. So walk me through like a little secret, but walk me through like your craziest Clay workflow.
Craziest Clay workflow. I think people are always surprised when they see that we're not doing anything too crazy in Clay. Like it's, pretty much like repeating the same principles, which is like unique data sources, filtering based on whatever information we can find. Sometimes you also need to research and enrich before you can filter. But besides filtering, research and enriching, personalizing, sending to our email sequencer, that's kind of the sauce. I'd say the best campaigns that we've run, and maybe some of the more complex ones, are ones like we do Reachly campaigns or SendSpark campaigns that have dynamic copy for each website, right? That's pretty good. So you basically use the variables within Clay like you would an email. You would put those in a dynamic landing page. So you have like, potentially even like a short sales letter that's customized to the prospect. Like you fill in the spots where your personalizations are relevant. As far as like unique data sources, sometimes we will do like seed funding articles where we will pull in recent seed funding, and we'll find the company mentioned, we'll find a decision maker and using AI and do that to do stuff. But sometimes, the news-based data sources aren't always the most accurate. I'd say like one of the best or most complex ones we have in terms of outside Clay is we scrape a government database, clinicaltrials.gov, daily using a hidden API with a webhook to bring that in Clay to see if there's any new clinical trials that have been posted. And then we automatically send outreach whenever a company posts an active clinical trial. And then we, for our compliance and regulatory SaaS client, we try and say like, hey, I saw you just got involved with this clinical trial. Would it be helpful if you had, an equality management service for your company? And the timing usually is pretty good on that. And then the other best workflows are like, website visitors and things like that. But nothing we do is too complicated. We have like multiple table flows where we go from like data source to company to person to emails. But I mean, maybe I'm underestimating. It's hard when you've been in clay tables for a while to be like, oh, this isn't that complicated, but maybe it's just me. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like those are some like crazy advanced technique, right? You're talking about like API callings, you're
yeah,
talking about webhooks and things like that.
yeah,
Let's say for those with, I guess, like non-technical background and they want to get started with clays and things like that, what would you say is like simplest workflow in Clay that everyone should just like start building like tomorrow, save time?
yeah. It's funny 'cause I just had a demo where I was trying to convince
Mm,
someone who had never seen Clay in
mm,
their life, like how to use it. And so basically, we had a list of event attendees, and you could make a template based off this where you enrich the company domain for the list of companies, right? Like different lead sources are going to be missing different pieces of data. But let's just say you only
yep.
have a company name and that's it. You could enrich if it's a big enough company, you
Mm,
could enrich the company domain, and then you can find the roles you want at the company, and then from there you could find emails and LinkedIn, just bam, 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 like that. And that's like I'd say that's a use
mm,
case that most people can appreciate. And for even people who don't like have that many new leads coming in or that many prospects, you can bring in your old CRM data and re-enrich that and throw out the people who are no longer working
yep.
at the company and find a new role at the company. So those are two like simple data enrichment is probably like the simplest use case for Clay, I would say.
Yep. Yep. I like to share mine too. You know, my favorite like basic go to is just like you paste like the company domains and it would just exactly what you say. It find the data and it automatically clean up using like all these tools built in like ICPs and just like find email and things like that and just
Yeah,
enrich off that automatically. So it's kind of like you build one table and then for every campaign you can just default back to it. It's crazy. Like
yeah. Using templates is amazing for sure. And I need to do it even more for myself, but it's crazy how people watch me just enrich like 1,000 companies in the email, and they'll like have the emails ready in like 5 minutes with some templates that we have. And I'm like, no, no charge, don't worry about it. And they're like, oh wow, you just did like 2 weeks of work for me. So
yeah. Yeah. Hey, you know what? We've been talking so much about Clay. So, Clay, if you guys are watching this, I'll link Adam and my Venmo in the description. So please like pay us like sponsor and things like that. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All right. So I guess like the next thing I want to talk about is just like intent triggers, right? So we've been talking so much about like personalization and what we can accomplish with AI and Clay, and there has been a lot of like buzzword that's thrown out there about like intent triggers and things like that. So what are some of the intent triggers that you've been seeing that are working across like our industry that people should like start using and how that can play?
Yeah, yeah. I think generally when we bring in a client might already have lead lists, whatever. What we like to do is like an early intent trigger would be monitoring those company for job changes, right? Like company brings in a new CTO, they might, be willing to evaluate their code with my one of my clients'
Mm,
softwares, especially being a new CTO. I think that's like pretty
mm,
good intent or pretty good trigger. Other ones are like headcount change. You can have all these tables automatically set up just to monitor job changes, headcount changes. And a friend actually has a list of like 75 business B2B triggers that you can use. And most of them are possible in Clay, right? Say like somebody, hires somebody, you can do hiring triggers, like someone you're monitoring hires someone, that's another trigger. And there's so many different ones that those are like the two most common ones, I would say. We also, I'm trying to think of what the one we do is, I guess like monitoring for
mm.
clinical trials, like I mentioned already, is a and then like another, I guess this isn't a trigger, but finding lookalike companies and then sending them case studies you have that are
That's
similar to
interesting.
them is another good use case. Stuff we have automatically when we set up our clients.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Those
Yeah.
are a lot of tips. What do you think like AI is gonna do in like the code app our industry moving forward?
Well, for one, I already see it being able to be, you can use AI to enrich
Mm,
or to find leads. You can use it to enrich, you can use it to research. Like you almost, like I could see a future which like ChatGPT 4.0 or whatever version is out at the time basically replaces every other enrichment we use inside Clay, right? But I also see like AI SDRs and BDRs being one, and then I think a service which we use, I think is it octave.com,
mm,
like can do all the market research and figure out like initial emails and initial hypotheses to test for emails, which is really insane. Like it does all the persona generation, it does email generation, it finds potential triggers and stuff you can use to test people. So I think in the future AI might be so good that it even takes over some of the work that we do in Clay,
yeah,
right? But for now, it sounds good. And in the future, like we see the fact that AI can probably be doing phone outreach so that we can focus on email and other crazy stuff like that. But there's so much potential, scary things, good things, bad things, lots of potential ways things can go. But for now, I'm pretty excited.
yeah. And you know what's one thing that I'm most excited about when it comes to AI in future is copyright.
Yeah, well,
Copywriting.
copyright. I mean,
I
right playing is okay, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's like
exactly. Like look, no shade to other AI copywriting tools out there, but I'm looking forward to see a world when AI could write like a perfect cold email, different every single time. That will be amazing. But
yeah.
again,
There are agencies right now that exist that have like you put in the client questionnaire and it generates all the copywriting. Right now, like our value prop is that we don't do that, right? So our emails get, maybe double the response rate that AI agencies are using, but that's pretty crazy that like, the gap is closing between AI
yeah,
written emails and what we can do and the results you can get. So it's definitely crazy.
yeah, exactly. And I could see it work only if you like know like the basic like fundamental of like copywriting though. By the way, we
Right.
have an episode about copywriting, so if you're interested, please check it out. All right, so I know our time's coming up short, so I have one last question for you, right?
Sure.
And walk me through an example of a very successful cold email campaign that you launched either for yourself or for a client. And now this might not be applicable for everyone to learn, but just walk me through like the craziest, like the best campaign you've ran, the most successful.
Yeah, I mean, most successful would probably be our own campaigns. I think we've generated ourselves like 50 meetings in the last 2 months, sending 200 emails a day using that ICP personalization that I mentioned. So, I'm probably going to be talking about this on LinkedIn in the future. It's been like secret sauce up until now. The data source was really unique, right? There's nothing super complex about this campaign, but we used scrapely.cloud to scrape all the followers of Clay, right? Anybody who's following Clay could be a customer for us, not always, but we did some filtering on that list to just remove people who are clearly competitors or in niches that we didn't want to
Mm,
touch. But that left us with, I think, like 7,000 prospects, right?
yeah.
And so we decided to use that ICP personalization, bare minimum in an email. So subject line is basically Clay workflow or Clay demo. colon their exact ICP to like show them how to find those people and how to enrich them. And then the email copy is really simple. In this case, I should explain beforehand that we're using reach.ly, which is similar to SendSpark, similar
Mm,
to SalesMate, similar to like a million other services out there that we just happen to like it,
yeah.
right? So what it does is generate a dynamic landing page for each prospect, and maybe we can include some info like so people can see visually what this looks
Mm,
like. But at the end of the day, they go to the landing page. It says, hey, would you be interested in spending 30 minutes working on a Clay workflow with me? And at the end of it, you'll be able to generate like 50 to 100 leads automatically each week. So I set up like a streaming table with them in a call, and the offer is like a free 30-minute consulting call, which is pretty sick. So in that email, what it basically says is, hey, like saw you were following Clay. I think it's something like, even if you're not using Clay right now, give this a look. I'm going to show you how to build a streaming table for your exact ICP. And then there's a thumbnail from Reachly. So Reachly is like the other side of the tech. We pull that data into Reachly. I think it soon will have a Clay integration, but it generates this dynamic landing
yeah.
page. People can book a call with me straight there. And yeah, we've been like, I was sending 200 emails a day for months, and we've been booking, at least 2 to 3 calls a
Mm,
day. It's probably tapered off a little bit as that list became less
mm.
secret, but it's been absolutely crazy. We set up our Clay tables in a way so that I don't really do much work other than loading into Smart Lead, and we generate like 2 to 3 meetings a day based on stuff like that.
That's crazy. And I actually love the fact that you touch base on like every single thing, like the targeting, the lead magnet that you're using, and the
Yeah,
copywriting like that, to kind of show like how important it is to like have a bunch of variables together, right? It's
right.
not about like
Yeah,
copy, have tons of personalization, like, hey, saw you went to XYZ high school and things like that. Like those are irrelevant, but like you have to pay attention to like other things to make the cold email. Yeah.
yeah. There's so many cool tools out there that are coming out these days. You can do AI lead magnets, but obviously, the better the lead magnet, the better offer you have, the better the results are going to be. So, usually I see success. The better the offer is directly correlated to how well it's going to do. But I like to say that my own copywriting and tech played a role in this. So,
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, I think time is up for today's interview. Adam, I really appreciate you for joining us today. If you guys are interested in having a Clay workflow build out or anything Clay related, hit up Adam. He's always open for business. Use the code Wesley Sexy for about
yeah.
whatever 50% discount. I'm kidding, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. But Adam was just like, I didn't agree to that.
No, I mean, I'm happy to meet with anybody who's interested, even people who just need help. So I spend a good portion of my time just helping people. So
Yep. All right. Perfect. I'll link Adam down below if you're interested in working with him. I appreciate you for your time again, and I'll see you soon.
thanks, Wesley.